Okay. Wait, we're here on Friday for our Zoom class. We're scheduled to Sunday, 11:30 to 1, be in our weekly outdoors. Last week was a combination of things. It looked like rain, so we actually decided. So let me do this. I just wanted to discuss something. It's a term that sometimes gets thrown around, okay? And it's called base. Base. And this is going to be harder, but let me do this. It's going to take a little convoluted stuff, but I think we can do it. Do believe we can. And what I'm going to do is ask David, who's in the audience. Okay, I'm going to text you a photo. It's a collage. I've had two separate. I was playing around with my phone this morning. And what I did is I saw two photos. I said, I'll make a collage out of them. And then when I did, they're kind of like, like side by side, I began to realize it's like, wow, this is there's a reason why I, for example, let me see. Okay, we go image, go this way. Okay, so I don't know if this works. If it doesn't work, I'll just show it on my phone. But David, I'm texting you this photo. So if you could somehow put it on the screen, okay?
Okay, give me a minute because I have to get it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's more than fine. We don't have to do that. But base was something that the training in Japan. There was an awful lot of swati waza, ground technique, and apparently, sensei would walk in and he would take a class over. Because he just would say, this is not Aikido, apparently. But if they were on their knees, he would just say, okay. So, there's a certain area where, the base wasn't talked about, but she did a lot of swati waza. In fact, probably the first year I was there, I would estimate that was where I was with Linda Holiday Sensei, Mary Heine Sensei, and Shingu. Maybe as much as 60% of her training was down there. And, what happened after that, it was a short year, but, I got back and, I'm at my parents' house and I would kind of extend my legs and I go crack. I noticed that, that there'd be some popping in the knee joints from that, but it was really funny. And also sitting seiza. In fact, I remember one time, for whatever reason, like I think I was with Lauren Hare Sensei, and he stood up and he was having a little bit of, okay, good. Okay. Now, so this is something I did today. And, these are two photos that I got off of Facebook, I think, and saved it to my phone. And, sometimes what I've been doing lately, especially with my granddaughter, is getting photos of her and then kind of making a collage. And, to my right is Stephen Curry of the Golden State Warriors. And whoever, and to my left, okay, is Dame Diana Rigg, who unfortunately left us September the 20th of last year. And it takes that one of her takes a little explanation. She's in the spy show, The Avengers. She's Mrs. Emma Peel. And there's an assassin in the Sultan's harem. They're being visited by a dignitary from the Middle East. And England wants to negotiate for oil rights. Makes sense, right? And they somebody who really wants to take over the Middle Eastern country figures what can happen is, the Sultan is assassinated in England, and they're not going to give the rights to England. And of course, the Russians are behind it all, so they're working through the Russians, and so they have a spy, an assassin that's been smuggled into the harem area, and so no men are allowed in there. So Mrs. Peel goes undercover, so she's in that sort of like that outfit, and she kind of does this dance of the seven veils. That's one of my favorite episodes, called Honey for the Prince. But it's really interesting that you get Stephen Curry about to pull up, probably from about 30 feet, and then you look at her stance. Okay, now it's not so much a stance, but okay, now a lot of people kind of say, okay, Curry, he's a skillful guy, he's not an athlete. Whether you're an athlete or not, you can have base. It has a lot to do with who you are. And I suspect when he was a little kid, he had it. He was in high school, he had it. In college, he had it. He definitely has it now. And Dame Diana Rigg, was playing a woman as an action hero. And she has to fight this guy. It's a really, the assassin picks up a sword, and she picks up a sword, and they kind of have a sword fight. And it's a wonderful episode. I mean, but if you look at that, there's a quality that they both have: professional athlete, professional actress. And if she was playing Lady Macbeth, she would still have base. And if Stephen Curry, he was apparently a very good baseball player, but he said, okay, I'm going to play basketball. The other thing he's really good at is golf, but he's a basketball player. But it has nothing to do with what you're doing. But usually, if you have base, you usually find something. You find something that you can sort of line up to, becomes kind of your mission. So Mr. Curry is, they're approximately about the same age. I mean, Dame Diana Rigg is probably in her late 20s. And that picture was taken, and Curry is in his early 30s. So, they're, and what happens is obviously, in another 15 years, he's not going to be playing professional basketball. And she went on to, what did she do? Well, actually, she went on to have a long career: stage, television, film. In fact, what was really interesting was that, relatively late, usually, I mean, she, for example, was a classically trained Shakespearean actress. And she tried out for this role in a British spy series. She wasn't even the first choice. They hired another woman, but they actually made a couple of episodes, and they scrapped that actress, and they remembered her, so they brought her in. And so she became Mrs. Emma Peel. And so many, now you see all these women action heroes, but she was pretty early, okay? And Mr. Curry, you can kind of see there's something there which is different than, I mean, both of them are in motion. And that's one thing about base. Base is different than ground. But, to have ground, to be who you are fully in what you're doing. And it's not just a physical thing, but you're engaged mentally, emotionally, spiritually even. That's, one of my definitions of base. So right there, if you look at my personal archetypes, okay, those are two of them. I mean, people that I really, studied. Okay. And she was probably the first, like two others I would bring up. And I'm not going to rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, but obviously Ueshiba O Sensei is one, and Chet Baker, the jazz trumpeters, the other one. Those four form kind of a fantastic four for me. And Curry is obviously right now the one that's the most active. In fact, 3 out of the 4 have departed this mortal veil, and he's young, and he's still kind of in an extended prime. So right there, and one thing that for example, Robert Nadeau Sensei, that was when I first came back from Japan. That was a major word, was bass, and so I mean the techniques. I mean, there's depending on where you study. Like he did his study when O Sensei was in Tokyo in the 60s at Hombu Dojo, and I trained there a couple of times, but I was mainly down south in the Shingu Dojo. But bass is bass. And so I thought that would be interesting to bring that there, because neither of them is an Aikidoist. And that particular position, what really struck me is, that's an action scene that Diana Rigg was in. So that was captured. And then I saw it and I saved it for some reason on my phone. And then I saw this photo of Stephen Curry and I saved that on my phone. And I was just sort of playing around and I just made this collage because the two seemed connected. And I began to go, oh yeah, that was it. Now bass isn't that particular configuration of where the feet are. Bass is a quality that they both have. As I said, she's the other thing about Dame Diana Rigg, yeah, she actually, much later in her life cycle, she was in Game of Thrones. I don't think she won the Emmy, but she was nominated for an Emmy. And so, I mean, you get somebody who's, a young actress, and she's, wearing all these stylish outfits, right? And doing all this stuff. And then she's in her 70s, late 70s, not quite 80, I don't think, but maybe late 70s. And all of a sudden, she is a major character in a TV drama. So her ability, right? I mean, you're young, you're attractive, and all of a sudden you're much older, and still you're there. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Curry, once his basketball career ends, was destined for something. Not that he's the TV star, but political or something. Okay, this is just the beginning for him. I just get that feeling. So anyway, thank you, David. So if we could kind of restore the screen, we can get on. Good. Before we get up and move, I don't know, anybody with a comment or question? So I'm using that photo because neither of them is an Aikidoist, but whether you're on the stage or on the basketball court, there's what's called bass. So anybody with a question or comment out there before we get up? No?
This is Audrey.
Yes.
That concept of bass is really something that I've needed, because as I got my artificial knees, I've lost that sense of connection.
Okay.
But what I wanted to talk to you about was a few weeks ago, I said, okay, I'm going to watch some of Stephen Curry's special, highlights, because I'm not really a sports fan, and you've given me a new insight. And so as I was watching the first one, it gave me so much to think about that I didn't watch another one. And what I saw him do was dribble in between two players like their legs that seemed impossible to fit in that space.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at that and I'm going, I hear all the things you've been talking about, but I go, it didn't look like there was enough space to put a full man in between those two legs. So I'm wondering if he's doing more than the basketball shots.
Oh, yeah, I would say, yeah, count on it.
And
Yeah.
so as I saw it, so I'm still thinking about that move. I'll go back and watch some more, but it almost looked like he shrank his body. And I know that sounds outrageous, but I'm still thinking about it because I'm kind of getting that you're seeing some of these things that we talk about, and I don't have a rational place to put them.
Well, he doesn't have superpowers, but he has a dimensional sense. And if you watch the superhero movies, if you were to ask me, since they have superpowers, I'd probably say, I don't think so. But he was dimensionally so advanced that he appeared to. He had a physical body. Okay. But he, if you look at it, it looks kind of crazy because people see him, they attack, and he's already over there. And they go, how stupid can they be? But from what they saw, he was right there. And if they were a little too drifty, he'd really tell them to come in, or really tell them to hold, because, there's sometimes going to fall for this old man. No, you really hold. And then Ano Sensei was yelled at. And so he says, he's going like this. And he went, what happened? So, in that way, I mean, sometimes that tends to, okay, combate. I don't think Sensei meant it that way. It's like, this is a feel experience for you. And if you kind of feel like you're falling for me, you're not going to get the experience. And so sometimes people get carried away, with that sense. But if you go, yeah, there's something going on here, but we're there. Okay, must have base too. All right. And so, yeah, I would say that one thing about Mr. Curry is that when things are very tight, it's like he's in a very spacious area, where most of us go this way. It's just very cool. And the other way, okay, now I'm going to dribble the ball between your legs. Unexpected move. He's able to kind of create in the moment that way. Now, I would say in that way, in Ueshiba Sensei's terms, itakemusus. And, he's dimensionally. I mean, there are basketball players who can jump higher, run faster, maybe even do fancier stuff, like the Globetrotters and stuff. But within the flow of the game, he's the best I've seen. Okay, and I've seen Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Jerry West. Locally, the Warriors had a great player, Rick Barry, and Steph is the best because he has a dimensional sense. He's coming from a finer dimension right here. And there's something called base that facilitates that. You go into a finer dimension and get vague here. He's in that finer dimension and also right here. And whatever's out there, space-time a little different, he's right here. And they kind of overlay. So that's what I would say. And, the thing about the picture of Diana Rigg, right? She's probably in her late 20s, very attractive woman. Okay. And, she's nominated, I think, maybe 3 times for an Emmy Award. And I think she lost every year to an actress named Barbara Bain, who was on this competing spy show called Mission Impossible. And, you know, Barbara Bain was a kind of sort of an attractive woman with blonde hair, but her whole thing, you know, a Mission Impossible, there was all this stuff going on. And she was supposed to be the woman that goes into the room. And so everybody's looking at her. So they're rewiring things and doing all that stuff. And my comment about Barbara Bain is, why are they distracted? And Patrick McNee, you know, wrote a book, you know, about, you know, his experience with the Avengers. And he goes into how Diana Rigg lost 2 or 3 times to Barbara Bain. And, you know, his comment was, well, look, she's one of the greatest actresses in history. We have Dame Diana Rigg. She was given that title because of, you know, her work on the stage and in film, right? And he says, we have now Dame Barbara who? Nobody remembers Barbara Bain anymore, but Diana Rigg, still, even now, a force, okay? So there's something about that is very difficult to categorize, okay? You know, she's physically moved on, but, you know, the Avengers, I mean, for what it is, you know, and the role that she played, I mean, you know, Scarlett Johansson, the Black Widow, so many woman action characters came out of that character that she portrayed. So anyway, anybody else before we get up? That was, by the way, thank you, Audrey. Okay, anybody else? Something to bring up or question? Okay, let's, yeah. And let me, there, and, okay, so base is something that you know, you can, for example, base is not squatting and sitting. Like there's a base for being in this room. In fact, you know, if you were to walk on stage, and yeah, they would call it stage presence. You know, and if you make a form of it, base, right? And anything, you know, for example, we're going to do some changes here. Boom, 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 boom. And, you know, I can be caught up here. You don't have to look a certain way to have base. But for example, boom, 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 boom. I learn a lot. Curry goes between, you know, whoa. The way that he moves, you know, can be translated in. If you have base, you make quick decisions that are good. Boom. If you don't have base, there's a lot of energy moving. We're tentative. Where it's like boom, 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 boom. Base. Okay. Base. Boom, boom. So if I were to say, okay, now you might say, well, I'm too distracted doing this stuff. Then you can just sort of, okay, I'm going to swing. There's base and a cut. But there's a base, boom, and a thrusting motion. And some of that is being around the body. I'm going to do this until I finally get it. Well, maybe at some point the base kicks in. Oh, all right. And you have to have a certain knowledge about what you're doing, but so when the actual pace of things picks up, base. They get more bass, boom, boom, then I can handle. Boom. Okay. So I'd just like you to move. You can do that just with the okay. Boom. 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 Base. Base. Okay. So we're kind of moving. You can move with a staff or a sword or something in between. Anybody with a question or observation, something to share? Anybody? Okay. Now, some of the things, I mean, it's you're gonna watch our sensei. He's just this movements are very, but there's a she's so sensei. So base has something to do with like I am who I am doing what I do. Okay, as opposed to I'm doing something, I'm studying it or trying to do it better. I am who I am doing what I do. And if I'm Dame Diana Rigg, and have to play Helena in Midsummer Night's Dream, boom, boom. All right. Chet Baker, and I'm going to play Carnegie Hall with Jerry Mulligan. It's a certain sort of, okay. Boom, 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 boom. Now, sometimes what happens, the movements get, can get very fancy. So I'm kind of, really what it is, a little bit, boom, there's a base. And that base makes those movements, boom. If Curry's going to dribble between somebody's legs, boom, and yeah, okay. Fancy happens as an adjunct to that. This gets deeper, truer, then fancier happens around that. If you go too much for fancy, you get pulled out, okay? People that try to copy Curry in a game probably will mess up, okay? Because, okay, I'm going to dribble the ball between your legs. It's like, no, that's a horrible, but maybe, boom, boom, that's something that's done within that moment of that game, all right? Okay? So, yeah, boom, 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 boom. Oh, about like some of those sensei things, he's not drifting up that way. When he's in some sort of prayer position, he's got base. He's not in an exaggerated base. He is who he is, doing what he's doing. Boom. Boom. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so I can move around a little bit. Base, 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 boom, base, boom. Anybody with anything to share? One thing that I noticed, for example, let's say we're going this way, this way, this way, this way. Okay, that's good. But what happens is as you start to progress, the energy or the information flow through you starts to pick up. All right, so if I'm going this way, boom, 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 right about there, boom, 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 boom. The changes happen and they just organize through you. Okay? And what happens a lot of times is that, if I'm kind of high, maybe some base, but not enough, I get pushed. Okay? So, boom, 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 boom. The information streams, the energy flows, if you follow it, start to come quicker, quicker, and they organize and organize and organize and organize and organize and reorganize. Boom. And when you're standing here, you're in a zone of clarity. So being able to, if you're in a situation has possibilities, flows to it. Most people, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that. I'm out of my league there. But certain people have the ability to step into a situation and to navigate these flows. And one thing about Stephen Curry, for example, he's oftentimes the focal point in the game. The other team says, stop Curry. His own teammates say, get Curry the ball. Or move to complement him so that he's in an effective zone, okay? So even though there are 9 other players on the court, 4 on his team, 5 on the other, and all that's moving at a very fast pace. And there he is, being able to process that. Knows when to pass, when to cut, when to dribble, when to do something kind of crazy, boom, when to shoot. And when that picks up, he gets clearer with himself. Now, everybody goes through phases. The last couple of games, I wouldn't put it on him. It's just because when he's in that zone, everything's fast. His teammates have been so awful because they can't keep up. There's one guy that can keep up with him, that's Draymond Green. And the rest of them don't know what to do. And so what happens is that, he's kind of left on an island somewhere, So that's with the tricky area. You can be too good. Okay. So, that's a nice problem to have, by the way. Maybe frustrating because the world kind of moves at its own pace, and you can be in a zone that is very advanced. But when the information streams, the energies start to pick up, and they pick up. And certain people, when they pick up and they get faster, they get clearer. And all of a sudden, boom, something great starts to happen. And so that means that person has a base equal to the situation. And so they are themselves doing what they do in a very elevated arena or realm. Okay? Wow. And you could start out slow. Boom, 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 boom. You're going to start out just with your own breathing. And how that affects your own motion. I think one thing, if you're a classically trained actor or actress, you're going to get a lot of voice coaching. And when the voice coaching, voice and breath and posture. Okay. Stephen Curry does certain things to work on breath because he's moving on real fast, but he's able to slow his heartbeat during a timeout. Revitalize, reground his system. Like, for example, I'm kind of going this way with my hands, but I'm feeling that same reverberation in my toes and feet. And then when here, we can make that vibration bigger, or we can boom, collapse it, concentrate it, boom, boom, boom. And if I'm out here, I get lost in the information of it. Boom. Boom. If you want to accentuate the bass, you can do that. Or conversely, you want to be able to navigate different streams of information. Boom. So those are things that if you want to see Bruce Lee, he's a bomb. This guy's got a lot of bass, obviously. Okay. But there are certain, photos of O-sensei, one where he's pretty old and he's kind of going like that. And you can see that, he had bass. You watch, I think it's 1935, where he's, a lot younger, and you can see him, a lot of exaggerated. Stands a lot more like Nado Sensei, stands, okay? And as he gets older, then, there's the got the bass. One thing about the bass is that, you basically, there's timing. If you are, for example, an actor or actress, and you're interacting with other people in a stage play or in a cinematic scene, there's timing. And Diana Rigg, she shared the stage with, the greats, right? Boom. She played Shakespeare with Paul Scofield and how many others? Boom. Timing. And you want to be on stage with Sir Ralph Richardson and mess up the timing on the delivery? No. Chet Baker really was noticed when he was chosen by Charlie Parker to do a West Coast tour. And you're playing with Bird, right? You were the person, you're the trumpeter he chose. And you want to go out there, da, 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 and mess it up? I don't think so. So bass, timing. There's a beat here. Now, what you can do is move between the beats. Now, first of all, what is this about? Well, energy moves. And oftentimes, for example, this beat and that beat, you can squeeze between the this and the that. That's kind of what O-sensei does. I mean, he kind of senses the intention of people. He moves over here and he goes over there. It looks as fake as anything. But, it's real difficult to get, you call the energy movement without some bass. You could look at it, imitate it. Boom, 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 boom. You can exaggerate that motion if you like. Boom, 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 boom. Just kind of want to gather. The energy is, from down here, for example. Okay. Generally, as you get older, right? Your movements are more economical. You don't see O-sensei when he's, got the beard and the hair kind of, getting down that much. But there's so much depth and ground there. And there's also the balance of the finer, right? The denser, the finer. Amatsukami, kunitsukami, boom, boom, boom. Okay. So bass. Okay. So get bass, the breathing. Starts to settle into a deeper rhythm. Things like movement goes to the stillness, goes to different motion, goes to stillness, goes to different motion, goes to stillness. So, in a sense, he's talking about the 8 powers. If you kind of hang out with the bass, those are just things that reveal themselves to you. Okay? Compression, release. Compression, release. Compression, release. Unification, the 1, boom. Division, 1, 2. Unification, division. Unification, division. Movement, stillness, motion. Stillness, motion. Expansion, contraction. Expansion, contraction. Boom, boom. So if you hang out and go deep enough, bass, you start to kind of get the, that's where, O-sensei, if you read his stuff, it's philosophy. Yeah. Like most of the really good stuff in Japan was not necessarily on the mat. It was kind of, you were down here. Hikizuchi sensei would lecture for, and you're trying to figure that out. You're also battling all the discomfort down here. So you're kind of in this, trying to get the information, but you're also dealing with, now what happened? You go, I gotta get up, but bass. Let me get up a little slower than I used to. Yeah. Okay. Maybe. may go back out there and move a little bit, but anything come up for people? These are just a couple of tips that I have, from if I work bass for that amount of time, 50 plus years, but there's always a bass there.
I'm wondering if
Yes.
bass is, if how bass is related to the energy well dimension. You say
That's a good question. Because really what it is, for example, we're here in this physical realm. And we have the capacity, because the energy realm exists, or energy realms dimensionally exists right here. And I can kind of know that there's a perfection or something out there. It's a philosophy. But the ability to boom, embody that here. Maybe not as much as O-sensei could do. Yeah. So yeah, go on.
As you energy well that, and you do downtime and finer, deeper, are there more than one bass?
Bass is a constant, but as you go from dimension to dimension to dimension, let me back up a little bit. Okay, for example, okay, there's a bass reading this from sitting here. Okay, I'm present. Now I'm going to do just sort of a relaxed, settle, open. Now, when I start to do that, I start to pick up the flat of the floor. Boom. Good. Now, let me do another relax, open, settle. Starting to pick up the space beneath the floor. Now I'm going to do another relax, open, settle. Now that energy there starting to kind of circulate. Ooh. And you can actually play games. For example, let's just do this. The energy, see, nothing's ever lost. Information's present. Let me just say, okay, I'm going to say right now, for who I am and what I'm doing right now, I'm going to tune in to Stephen Curry and learn something that will help me about bass. Yeah, what's interesting about his bass is that, it's almost like, he's in this sort of motion quite a bit. Okay, but he doesn't, see, if you go like this, it's too slow, but he's kind of like this and that. Like, for example, you have a bar and you have two things here, and then they go this way, and they're synchronized. And right here, for example, boom. Now, for example, if you want to go like that, and this one goes, but this one doesn't, then you get that awkward moment, or you set, all right? But for example, right here, see, if I'm going to go this way and this stalls, the defender adjusts to me. But if I go this way, the defender is still looking at this, and I'm going to go that way. So, he has this sort of a bar here, and he has these two things here, and they're synchronized. They go this way. See, I started that, but then I can go that way. Or I can go this way, or I can go that way, or I can go this way, that way, this way. Then, all right. So you can play games that way because you can ask, okay, gee, okay, if I were, for example, to say, okay, because your information is still here. Something I could learn about bass from Dame Diana Rigg. You have to have some bass of your own. Oh, wow. A real depth. A lot of her, she did fight scenes and everything. But a lot of her connection there, depth of voice. And her diction and use of words was a lot like Chet Baker's use of sound. And another British actress I like is Kate Beckinsale. And she did the Underworld movies. And so the first one starts with her in the bell tower. And she's kind of, she's British, so she has that British tone. And so she's talking about the war between the vampires and the lichens. And I thought that was so cool. I memorized it just because I liked that. She also wore a black combat suit and did martial arts. So, I thought, oh, yeah, she's kind of like Emma Peel, sort of. But what happened is, a friend of mine was the drama critic for the Metro magazine locally here. And so I recited the soliloquy in the bell tower to her. And she said, that's really nice. But she said, that's not Kate. And then I said, well, it must be Dame Diana Rigg then. Because Kate's thing is, Kate is good. I think she's very underrated as an actress because she's kind of really attractive, and sometimes that works against you. But the way that Diana Rigg used words, the war had all but ground to a halt in the blink of an eye. Lucian, the most feared and ruthless leader ever to rule the Lycan clan, had finally been killed. The Lycan horde gathered. See, there's a way where it just rolls off her, but it's coming from a real depth. And Kate doesn't have that. She's much more, she reads the words. But Diana Rigg, when she reads the words, it's just like Chet Baker adding something, or his silences are almost as meaningful as his sound and playing. That's Curry, when he goes this way, and then he just goes boom, boom, boom. He goes boom, 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 boom. His stillness sets up his motion. And so, those are, those three, right? Well, Sensei is, he's in a class way past those three. Okay. So he's real difficult. Okay. What are you going to learn from most Sensei? Well, you're going to play around with his stuff, but a major thing, bass. If I were to say, okay, what could I right now learn about bass from O Sensei? Yeah, surprisingly, he's a lot more like Diana Rigg. I get a column, up, down, down, up. That column kind of has a kind of a breath to it, up, down, up. Down there is very, very deep. That's why both of them, O Sensei with his chanting, I would have thought that he'd be a bit more like Curry, but that sound, that breath starts to kind of pulsate within itself and create sounds. See the out and the in, the out. They kind of dance together. It's not vibrato, as the singers. It's not that way. So his sounds kind of bend, boom, boom, and that way he's kind of like creating a much. Yeah, so you know, a lot of the stuff you got to play around with. If you're self-conscious, do it on your own. Okay. But you can, you know, for example, anything. If you say, okay, center, you can do the same thing, but we're working bass today. So, you know, what's interesting is, you know, there's a lot of his stuff, you know, around breath. I mean, Curry works breath. Obviously, Baker worked breath. Dame Diana Rigg, her diction, her presence came out of a depth and she worked breath. I'm sure if you study and you're a classical actress, you spend a lot of time on diction and breath. Okay? So, you know, these are just things. You don't have to, you know, I mean, to a degree, I mean, it's like, I like this stuff. I said, oh, how can you do that? I mean, if I was a normal time, I would see him do something and I would go out to the Y and I'd say, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that. See, okay, let me see what he, you know, but what I'd be doing right now is, you know, how he kind of, you know, there's a thing where he goes to the lane and somebody hits him and he spins around and, you know, he turns around, he goes like this, flips it, it goes in. And I saw a photo of it and I thought, you know, that's cloud hands in Tai Chi. Boom. Also, you know, like a lot of times I look at his pictures, you know, photos, and I go, yeah, that's you know, that's ward off left. Boom. Okay. Boom. Before he's going to do something, see how it's going to set up brush knee and twist step. So these are patterns of movement. And when you are working the base of it, yeah, so image in my mind. Let me go back, touch the base, and what can I learn at this level about that image? Boom, 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 boom. Center is possibility. Possibility here, double possibility. Possibility forward, possibility back. So I like that stuff. You know, it's you know, it's not purely what you call mental, but I'm curious. So when I research, I don't research like, let me figure this out. Although it may start off that way, but it's like, okay, let me feel. Oh, okay. Oh. You know, what I notice a lot of times, you know, for example, he goes under the hoop. He doesn't finish this way. You know, he's going lines on the left side. He finishes a lot of times here, which I was always taught not to do. But why? Because this is a more difficult angle, you know, here. But then again, you're going to get blocked here. But you either put it up, he can put it up at this funny little angle with very little space high off the backboard. Or kind of somebody's there, he flares out a little bit, flips it up with more arc before the guy can get his hand up. Boom. High with a spin. So I can work, you know, we kind of do this, which he can make. Or they're ready for this, so he flies out here, puts it up, boom, with spin, goes in. So for me, that, you know, I mean, he's the teacher. And then if I can do that, obviously I can start to understand what Kokyu Ho is. Or how he's going to pull up for a shot, I would understand Kokyu Ho, wouldn't I? The base is the same, even though the lineage is different, basketball, Aikido. Okay. Anybody else? You know, let me see. Yeah, we're kind of at that point. So, anybody else? So we did the. You know, we kind of went into base. What I might do is, you know, those of you that are on Facebook, maybe I'll post that one. You know, the Stephen Curry, Dame Diana Rigg one. You know, I was shocked because, you know, sometimes you do that. What I find with collages, right? You have a photo here, you make a collage of the two, then you say, oh, that's why those two stood out. And I never would have thought Dame Diana Rigg in the skimpy harem outfit, for her appropriate role within an Avengers episode, and Stephen Curry pulling up for a shot would be so connected. But you see, what it is they're both kind of very important parts of my psyche. I don't do anything that doesn't appeal to my imagination. Because there was something about him, and there's something about her. And imagination doesn't come from your everyday mind. It comes more from your soul. Boom. Okay. Anybody else before we break?
Hi, this is Cliff.
Yeah, hi, Cliff.
A couple of, I think, unrelated observations, but maybe they're related. The first first is when we were moving, I felt very bouncy and springy, which, on an intellectual level feels like the opposite of bass, but maybe requires, a certain amount of bass in order to allow that springiness. So that's the first observation. Okay. The second is you reminded me, because you were talking about Nado Sensei's wider bass. And I never quite, when I first took classes from him, he spent a lot of time talking about these bass and these big wide stances. But somehow he was doing these big, he's not short or anything, but he was doing these big wide stances without setting. Yeah. Right. And I never quite figured out how he does that. So I was wondering if you had any comments about that.
Well, you're wide, but you're deep. See, up here, everything is, back and forth. You start to settle deeper. Now, in that depth, it's still, but there's beats and movement going there. He likes to hang out there. Okay. I spent my time doing that. If you look at Osese 1935, he has that wide bass. Okay. What you notice is as he gets older, it's not that, he just goes this way, but the movement gets finer. Okay. So I think everybody goes through a period, where they oftentimes, you may major in wider, like for example, that was my first art. Okay, with Shotokan. I found the Tai Chi really good because it had a base that was a lot closer to the Shotokan than the Aikido, right? And so, sure. Yeah, so it was a good transition for me. But then I got back from Japan, and it was 1970. For actually a little more like, so 74, 75 actually. It's my second stay, came back, and then the Nado Sensei opened up San Jose, and he invited me to teach. So I started going to his classes. A lot of his work was bass, and I go and, I get invited to join his sitting group. I was standing, I was oh God, I am so dumb. I don't know what they're talking about. So if you sometimes when I say anything to say, you got nothing to say. Well, that was me, 1975. Now you can't shut me up. Okay, so sorry about that. But for example, here, but if you're just here, what are you going to do? Well, energy. The energy can move like that. Okay. Now, if you'll notice, a lot of Curry stuff. And for example, when I was a kid, I liked pitching better than hitting in baseball because I could take a baseball and grip it and hold it and induce a spin, and the ball would do this and that. But pitchers, literally, you look at them, and when they're pitching, they're like, man. And so Curry, he goes like, he's here, but all of a sudden, boom. It's wide. But then he gathers to shoot or to do something else, to pass. Okay? So, really, it's hard to do the longer stuff as you get older, but it doesn't mean you stop it. but you actually get more done with an economy of motion. Okay. Those of you who tuned into Linda Holiday Sensei's event last weekend, she had a couple of pretty young people, demonstrating, they led, basically Aikido movement exercise. And I think Nico, he was doing some beautiful stuff. And then I talked to Lauren Hare, or heard him say, you can do that stuff when you still have knees. Okay. And this is trickier because you get older. You can accomplish much more with less. But there's an area where it's really both things. This was, I think, was 2016, and the Warriors were playing the Oklahoma City Thunder when Kevin Durant, he didn't join the Warriors. That was the next year. He was on the Thunder, and what the Thunder would do, they would put these big guys like Durant and Serge Ibaka, who were about 7 feet tall, out on the perimeter on Curry because they figured they were just sort of, they could somehow, somehow bother him, right? And this wasn't a deep shot, but, he was paired up against Durant. And what happened, he went this way. He was this way, and he went this way to his left, and then he pulled up. But when he went this way to go left, he traveled 15 feet, which is the space between the basket and the free throw line. I was thinking, so he went from here to there. Now, some of it was because he traveled dimensionally, but his physical body had to increase, right? And Durant, to his credit, was right with him. But even though Durant is 7 feet tall, it was right with him. Curry goes to his left, he pulls up with Durant right in his face, 7 foot tall, and he nails the shot. And that is like super basketball. Durant's an incredible defender, even though he's known more for his offense. And Curry was facing almost the impossible, right? A 7 foot guy who could stay with him on that motion. But just the movement itself, from right here to 15 feet over there in one change, and some 7 foot giant right in your face, and you hit that shot. It was not a long shot, it's about 18 feet. But given, the degree of what he did, so you better believe he opened, okay? And the other guy that, basically Bay Area sports, before there was Stephen Curry, who was the big Bay Area star? Well, it was a Giants player named Tim Lincecum. He was about 5'10", and he was really small. They called him the Freak because, he was small, but he could throw 97, 98 miles an hour, which he wasn't supposed to be able to do, okay? And then what happened? Giants signed this guy named Randy Johnson, who was 6'10". And Johnson, threw about 97, 98 miles an hour. This is when he was older, so he was probably down to 94 or whatever. But, they're in training camp, right? And Johnson, is like, got the stride length because he's 6'10". And there's Timmy Lincecum, who's 5'10". And somebody who went to spring training was watching them both, said, here's Randy Johnson. Here's Tim Lincecum. And that Lincecum, a foot shorter, was getting the same stride length as Randy Johnson. And so, you know, that area right there, whether you're going to throw a baseball or whatever. I mean, you know, Lincecum, unfortunately, he kind of lost his rhythm. Okay. And I was watching him. I said, well, guess what's wrong with him? Well, he had 1, 2, what was it? It was kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4 balance motion. And he started going 1 through 4. He missed 3. And so what happened, he wore one of his hips out and had to get surgery on it. He was never the same. But I think he wore the hip out because he lost his motion. So, you know, I knew somebody, you know, who did work for the Giants. And I said, I think I could fix Timmy. Because what I would do is, you know, I'd have him kind of extend out with a support here, working 1 towards second base, 2 towards second base, but this dimension. 3 is where he lost it. He was going 1, 2, 4 and losing his balance. And that wore the hip out. But I'd say, okay, Timmy, towards second base here, further second base this way, home plate this way, now first base this way. And there are 4 balanced movements to your delivery when you get that wide step. And I think he would have gotten back to 95, 97 miles an hour. Hit a killer change of pace, a fork ball or a change. And it was a combination of that. Timmy was really fun. I mean, if you were to kind of go through, for example, Bonds, he was their star. And then, but he wasn't fun. I mean, he was, you get hit those home runs and everything, but he was chemically enhanced. And Timmy came across, you know, around right after Bonds retired. The Giants were very good, but he won 2 Cy Young awards, so the Giants were horrible. And then their first real taste of success, they won the World Series in 2010. He actually anchored them throughout the playoffs. And so he was kind of there, you know, and then he started having the problems because he lost the balance in his delivery. And so I told this guy, you know, he worked for the Giants and Arizona Diamondbacks, and also I think the San Diego Padres. He was actually the brother of my brother-in-law. Okay, I said, I think I can fix Timmy. Because, you know, I could see, you know, when he was on, he had these 1 right towards second base, 2 towards second base, 3 towards home plate, 4 towards first base. And then when he lost it, he was going 1, 2, 4, and he was missing 3. And therefore, you know, he was, his control wasn't as good and his velocity dropped and it was a mess. But that 1, 2, 3, 4 that he had was a beautiful sculpture. Okay. Anyway, anybody, that's base also. You know, Timmy, I don't think anybody, I really haven't seen a delivery like his, you know, before or since. Okay. And he was a star. He was, you know, before Stephen Curry came on the Bay Area, it was Tim Lincecum. And anybody, so, you know, I'm talking athletes because a lot of times you get that delivery was from another dimension. Okay. You know, just like Steph's shot is from another dimension, or Dame Diana Rigg's diction is from another dimension. Anybody before we go? Well, I hope that that gives you something to mull on. Okay, so base. By the way, David, thank you for posting it. Okay, because you know, as I said, sometimes you know, oh, I saved this photo, I saved that. Well, let's put them in a collage. I went, yeah, I can see why I saved that, because they're doing the same thing in different lineages: acting, stage, television, whatever. basketball, but they're based in both. Okay, so thank you all.
Thank you, Sensei.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, David. Good questions, Audrey. And thank you all. All right, that's everyone.
Thank you all. See you next time.
Yep, I don't know if I'm coming on Sunday in person, in no small part because I'm about to get my second Pfizer dose.
Yeah, I get that. I'm
So-
feeling better since my first one, so just take it slow, take everything easy. Bye-bye.
Yep, my plans for the weekend are to be nice to myself.
Good plans.
Bye, everyone.
You got a picture you want to share?
Hi, David. Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Do you have a picture you want to share?
No,
Okay.
I don't have a phone to send you one. I could have Jack send one off of his phone.
You wanted to know how to share a picture. Well, if you have a picture that you want to share, that's the only way I know to show you how to do it, is to have you do it.
Okay, well, if you could just explain the steps, like I would just email it to you, or I'd have to text it to you.
If you want to share a picture, it's different on every kind of gadget. So I do it on my phone by clicking on the picture, clicking share, and it gave me a choice, share to Zoom, so I shared it to Zoom. I don't even know how it worked. I just did it.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that. So that
So the most important thing is, if you're going to share a picture, is you have to have the picture on the machine that you're doing Zoom with. And then however that system, shares pictures in Zoom is how you do it. It's different on everything. So I can't really explain it to you. You have to have the picture before you can share it.
okay. If I'm doing Zoom off of my laptop, so I would have to send the photograph from the laptop. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you have to have the picture on the system that you're using for Zoom in order to share it in Zoom.
Okay. Well, I haven't got any photos on this laptop, so I'll try putting one there and then trying it next time we have a class.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.